Today's I can statement is I can use rounding or compatible numbers to estimate sums and differences. Some key words that we need to know are compatible numbers and rounding. Compatible numbers are numbers that are easy to mentally compute. So for example, we have 372 minus 149. If we're asked to estimate the answer, we can use compatible numbers to make it a little easier to solve. So 372, a good compatible number for that would be 375. I know that I can easily add or subtract that number. 149 would easily, a good compatible number for that would be 150. And now looking at my new problem, I have 375 minus 150, which is much easier to compute in my head. So I would get 225 as my estimation. When I look at my original problem, I have 372 minus 149. A little harder to solve. You'd have to use paper and pencil because you have to borrow from your neighbor and carry over. But we would get 223, which is very close to our estimation. Rounding is another way that we can estimate sums and differences. It's a process which tells us the multiple of 10, 100, 1,000, etc. that a number is closest to. So for example, 27 would round to 30 because that is the closest 10. And we've worked on rounding a lot in years past and even this year, so hopefully that'll just be a review. All right, how can you estimate sums? Before we move on, can you tell me what a sum is? Click submit when you're ready. Good. A sum is the answer to an addition problem. So let's look at this addition problem we have below. Students are collecting dog food to give to an animal shelter. Estimate how many pounds were collected in weeks 3 and 4. So over here we have our data. In week 3, we had 237 and 5/10 pounds of dog food. In week 4, we had 345 and 1/10 pound of dog food. So we can do this two ways. We can round and we can use compatible numbers. So if we're rounding to get our estimation, we would take a look and we would make sure we follow our saying, 5 or more, raise the score, 4 or less, let it rest. And I would take a look at my helper number. So in this case, we're rounding to the nearest 100 because we have the 2 in the hundreds place. We would look to our right and their helper number there is a 3, which tells me that I'm going to let it rest. So 237 and 5/10 will round to 200. Down here, we have 345 and 1/10, so we're going to look at that 3 as our underlined digit. Look to the right for our helper number, which is a 4, and that tells me that I'm going to let it rest, so my number is going to round to 300. So now my problem is much easier, and I can do this one easily in my head. 200 plus 300 equals 500. So students collected about, remember about is our keyword here, students collected about 500 pounds in weeks 3 and 4. Whenever you're answering an estimation problem, you want to make sure that you're saying about because you're not getting an exact answer when you're estimating. Another way that we can do this is by using compatible numbers. So 237 and 5/10, I could say 250 is a good compatible number for this. And all of our compatible numbers might be different. We might not have the exact compatible number to use for this. So it's okay if we're all getting something different when using compatible numbers. Looking over down here, we have 345 and 1/10. A good compatible number for that would be 350. So now my problem is much easier to solve. 250 plus 350 is going to equal 600. So students collected about 600 pounds in weeks 3 and 4. Here we see two different ways to solve the same problem using estimation. We'll notice that we didn't get the same answer, and that's okay, because when you're estimating, you're just trying to get around that exact answer. All right, let's do some problems together. So here we're going to estimate the sum or the difference using compatible numbers. Can you guys tell me what the difference means? What kind of math are we doing if we're finding the difference? Go ahead and submit when you're ready. Okay, good. We should have said subtraction. So when they're asking for the difference, we know that we're going to be doing a subtraction problem. So first, let's take a look at this problem. We're going to be finding the sum of 79 and 1/10 plus 39 and 4/10. We're going to do this one using rounding. So 79 and 1/10 can round up to 80 because I look I look to my number of my underlined digit, which in this case is going to be 7 because it's in our tens place.
The wedding showers will be starting in the lounge in a couple minutes.
Sorry about that. Okay, so the 7 is going to be my place that I'm going to round, or I'm going to change. My 9 is my helper number. The 9 tells me that I'm going to raise the score because it's 5 or more, which means my 7 then changes to an 8, and I get 80. I round to 80. All right, plus 39 and 4/10, same thing. My 3 is the number that I'm going to change, so I'm rounding to the nearest 10. My 9 is my helper number. I know that 5 or more, I raise the score, so I would change my 3 to a 4 because I'm going to add 1, and I would round 39 and 4/10 to 40. Now, my problem is, again, much easier to solve. My answer is going to be about 120. So 80 plus 40 is 120. All right, let's take a look at this one. We're going to find the difference, and we're going to use compatible numbers for this one. So I have 788 and 9/10 minus 572. When I'm looking at 788 and 9/10, I'm going to say that 800 is a good compatible number for me to use because I can easily compute that. Minus 572, I'm going to go with 600 for this one. Again, easier for me to do mentally in my head. You could also use 575, you could use 580, whatever is easiest for you. Again, when we're using compatible numbers, we all might find some different numbers to use. So now I look at my problem. I have 800 minus 600, which is 200. As you'll see, my answer, this is not the exact answer to this problem. It's an estimation, so it's not the exact answer. All right, why don't you guys try some on your own? First, I want you to find the sum of 149 and 2/10 plus 43 and 4/10. Go ahead and try that one on your own, and then we will go over it together. Click submit when you're ready. Okay, so we can do this again. We can do this 2 different ways. So we're going to do both ways just in case we all did something different. So first, let's do this with rounding. 149, sorry guys, okay. 149 and 2/10 can round up to, if we're rounding to the nearest 100, we would round down to 100. Why aren't we typing here? Okay. Again, I'm looking to my number, I'm looking at my hundreds place. I have my 1. I look to my right, which is my helper number, which is a 4. That tells me that I'm going to let it rest. So my 1 is going to stay the same, and my 2 numbers before the decimal turn to zeros. I can get rid of my decimal and my 2/10, and I round down to 100. All right, so now we have 100 plus, now here I'm going to round to the nearest 10 because 43, the 4 is in my tens place. I'm going to look to my helper number, which is my number to the right, and that 3 tells me I'm going to let it rest, so I'm going to get 40. My answer then is 140. All right, let's try using compatible numbers now. 149 and 2/10. Looking at this, I'm going to put 150 as my compatible number. Then I'm going to add 43 and 4/10. Looking at that, I'm going to say 40. 5 is going to be a good compatible number. Now I'm going to add those 2 together, and I'm going to get 195. Again, we all might have gotten something different, and that's okay. All right, go ahead and find the difference of 41 and 9/10 minus 27 using compatible numbers or rounding to estimate your answer. Click submit when you're ready. Okay, so 41 and 9/10. So using rounding, again, I'm going to look. I'm going to round to my nearest 10 because 4 is in my tens place. I look to the right. My helper number is 1, so that's going to tell me I'm going to let it rest. So my 4 stays the same. I'm going to put a 0 for that 1, and I'm going to round down to 40. So 40 minus, now 27. Again, we're going to round to the nearest 10. So 2 is in my tens place, which means we look to the right, which is, for my helper number, which is a 7. So I'm going to raise the score because it is higher than 5. My 2 turns to a 3, and my 7 turns to a 0. 40 minus 30 is much easier to solve. We get 10. All right, using compatible numbers. Looking at this, 41 and 9/10. Using compatible numbers, I personally would use 40. And then I would subtract 27. Again, very similar to our rounding one. I'm going to go with 30 as my compatible number. And I'm going to get the same answer, 10. So sometimes when we use compatible numbers in rounding, we might get the same answer as somebody who chose the opposite way to do it. And that's good too. But like I said, you won't always have the exact same estimation. That is okay. All right. Great job today, guys.